Hi, it's Tash, and today I'm going to be talking about my favourite legal topic of all, which is your client contract. I'm going to be digging into the 5 key ingredients you need to have a great client contract, which will keep you safe and protect you and your business. I'm going to start by having a look at what is going on at the very heart of a contract. Now, a typical lawyer might start to talk about offer and acceptance and consideration and those kind of very technical legal terms. But what I like to think about is when you're providing services, essentially it's an exchange of energy. So you're providing the services, and in exchange, your client is giving you something back. Typically, that will be money. And what your contract is doing is making sure that that exchange is beneficial and safe for everybody involved. So that's you and your clients as well. 3 of the main areas where your client contract helps you are clarity, boundaries, and protection. And these are absolutely essential and will be a complete game changer for your business. And that's why I get so excited. So when we think about clarity, the reason that's so important is that when things go wrong in a client relationship, typically it isn't because there is any malicious intention at all. It's because there's been some kind of misunderstanding between you and your client, or when they signed up with you in the first place, you didn't have the discipline to go through all of the different areas and things that might go wrong. And your client contract can really help with that. It also gets in place those healthy boundaries that you need in order to have a good client relationship. And those boundaries are going to cover things like what you're responsible for and what you're not responsible for, and the part that your client has to pay in the success of what you're doing, and the fact that you can't guarantee any particular results. It will also cover things like clients contacting you, how they can contact you, how much notice they need to give, if you've got some kind of one-to-one session or appointment, if they have to give you a certain amount of notice. All of those sorts of things that will help your business run with a minimum of hassle and the greatest of ease. And then finally, that kind of area of protection, and in particular just making sure that if things go wrong, and sometimes things do go wrong, you know, we're human, even though we do our very best in our businesses, sometimes things go wrong, and your contract is going to make sure that if they do go wrong, that you are only on the hook and responsible for what is reasonable in all of the circumstances. So we're going to move on now and look at those 5 key ingredients. So we talked about the fact that at the heart of your contract there is an exchange of energy, and the first 2 key ingredients are to do with that exchange. So the first one is making sure that there is clarity around exactly what you're doing and what services you are providing. And a really important part of that, in fact, is your services description. So I often describe your client contract as your personal business superhero, because it can sort out so many of the things that wake us up in the middle of the night and make us go hot and cold. So it is absolutely your business superhero. But if your client contract is your business superhero, then I honestly think that your service description is the really trusty sidekick, because 9 times out of 10, if things go a little bit wrong, or it's a little bit of a bump in the road in your relationship with your client, it's actually your service description that's going to get you out of trouble. So I just want to take a moment to think about what you should have in the back of your mind when you are setting out your service description, when you're setting out the services that you're actually going to provide. And I want you to think, if things go wrong with this client, is this a list of things that I can go through and we can kind of tick off and go, yeah, I've done that, I've done that, I've done that. Look, I've done all of the things I said I was going to do. I am providing my services in accordance with my contract and with my services description. So that's not the kind of marketing thing. It's not really about outcomes. It's about much more kind of nuts and bolts, measurable, factual things. So number of sessions, amount of time, length of sessions, access to materials, access to software, access to resources and a platform, all of those sorts of things. And don't forget to include as well, if people are getting some kind of bonus, then including the bonus in the service description is important too. So that's the first key ingredient. Absolute certainty around the services that you're providing, and your service description is a really important part of that. So the next thing is the other side of that exchange, and that's all of the really great, exciting bit for us, which is about payment. So make sure that you've got clauses in there dealing comprehensively with payment, how much you're getting paid, and also the mechanics of payment, when you're getting paid, and kind of what triggers payment, what the process is for you to get paid. So they're the first two ingredients. The third ingredient is, oh my goodness, it's such an important game changer of a section in your contract. I absolutely love it. It's really particularly important for any of us that are providing advice and services of that kind to our clients. I'm thinking also kind of coaches, consultants, mentors, anyone that's providing that kind of support. And that's the section which is the boundaries section of your contract. That is the place where you are going to set out your area of responsibility. So the things that you are happy to take on board as your area of responsibility, and just as important, what you're not, and just as important, the part that your client needs to pay, and the fact that you can't guarantee any results. All of those sorts of things go in your boundaries section. And in my experience, that is the bit of your contract that helps to make sure that you don't wake up panicking, that you don't go all hot and cold, that you don't feel really vulnerable, and that conversely you feel really confident to go all in with your business and do your absolute best job, that you grab opportunities that you'll come your way, that you fully promote, that you fully charge for your services. All of that tends to be bound in and connected with that boundaries section of your contract. I absolutely love it, and it's worth spending time in it and getting it right. I had a client called Sarah who came from a background of working in the police, and she was setting up a health coaching business, and it was absolutely transformational when she got the boundaries piece in place for her business through her client contract. And she said to me, I used to wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat. And then once I got my contract in place, that all changed. So it completely changed the way she showed up, and it enabled her to launch her business. And so many of the folk that start off by saying, you know, I'm scared, I'm not launching properly, I'm stuck in the beta zone, that's the bit of the contract that changes things for them. Can you see how much more fundamental and important it is than just the paperwork and just kind of ticking that box? It really does make all the difference. Okay, the next key ingredient is intellectual property, and having an intellectual property clause in your contract. Now this does a couple of things. Firstly, it makes sure that when you are sharing materials, for example, that could be some kind of workbook or course book or online copy on a platform, any of those materials and resources that you create, it's making sure that people understand that you own those things, that you own the copyright in them, and you're setting the boundaries and rules around what they can do with those materials. Now typically that will be, you can only use them for the purposes of this course or program. You can only use them for your own personal use or your own internal business use. Now, the other area that's really important is just having a think and being strategic. I love having conversations around this about what you might want to do in the future. And even if that feels like a long way off, now is the time to pave the way to all of the fantastic strategic things that you might do in the future, and in particular those kind of passive and semi-passive forms of revenue that you might want to add in. And so that is putting some boundaries around and limits around what people can do, not with the materials, but with the ideas and the systems and the processes that you are sharing. Because in the future, if you want to license other people, other business owners to use those things with their clients, you're going to want to keep a really close eye on what people are doing with it earlier on in the life of your business. Now, something that I've seen time and again with my brilliant coaches and mentors that I've had along the way is that they get really fed up, and who can blame them, with people that sign up for their kind of lower cost programs and courses and that sort of thing, and take their ideas. I'm not saying they copy workbooks and things, but observe and take and replicate their ideas and systems and processes and monetize them in their own businesses. You know, that's a real problem. So unlike copyright and unlike trademarks, they're not intellectual property rights in their own right. You can't just register them or put a notice on. You need to protect those things in your contract. So it's really important, and I'm so delighted when I can get that layer of protection in place for my clients. And then finally, that kind of more traditional thing that we expect our contracts to do, which is to protect us if things go wrong. Sometimes things do go wrong, and you are going to feel so much better. You're going to sleep so much easier at night, and probably if you share ownership of a house with anybody, they will as well. If you've got a good, strong limitation of liability clause in place in your contract, that's going to make sure if things go wrong, you're only on the hook for what is reasonable in all the circumstances. Now, that needs to be drafted by someone who knows what they're doing, because the right type of clause that will stand up when you need it most depends on what type of business you have, your products and services, and what kind of clients you have. So you need to get that right. You need to make sure that that's been drafted by a professional lawyer who knows what they're doing. Okay, there we are. Those are the 5 key ingredients. I could talk about them all day long, but I'll talk about them some more in other videos in the future. A couple of other things to mention. Make sure you work out if you supply to consumers or not. It's absolutely crucial, because if you do, you need a contract that complies with consumer protection legislation. Otherwise, again, it won't stand up when you need it most. And make sure that you have a contract which is the right tone for your business and for your values and your brand. I want you to feel really good. As one of my clients, Joanna, she arrived in our legal hub, she was a voice coach, she was absolutely terrified and hated anything to do with legals. And by the time she left, she said, every time I send out my contract, my heart sings. That was the best testimonial I've ever had. You want to feel that way about your contract. So just to sum up, the 5 key ingredients. 1, a very clear description of exactly what you're doing, including your services description. 2, something really setting out exactly what's happening on the payment front, how much you're being paid and how you're being paid. 3, boundaries. Oh my goodness, they make such a difference to your business. 4, intellectual property. Let's be super savvy and smart and set our businesses up for success. And then 5, limitation of liability. When it all hits the fan, you want to make sure that you've got a good, strong limitation of liability clause there. See you next time.